Hey, y'all. Today we're going to cover death, honey. Let's talk about death. Let's talk about death. Let's talk about death. There's a lot of different thoughts and theories on death. We are just going to share ours. Okay. I personally think that we're either going to degenerate further down into realms that are lower than the third dimension, or we have done what is required of us to do while we're in this waking state to go and ascend into spaces that are fit for immortal beings. I believe that, honestly speaking, there are particular actions that one can take that can ensure what happens in the afterlife for them. That's just my thought process. I believe that that is so, from various studies and experiences, for lack of better words. I've almost died twice. So it's kind of like, once it's happened, you know what I'm saying? Once it's happened, you hear what others say and you respect it, but you have had you've had the experience of, of what could possibly be. And everybody talks about different things. Some people talk about going towards the light. Some people talk about, it was a dark space. Some people talk about this bright shining light, like I couldn't pay attention to the light. And for me, that's where the term is coined, light and dark beings, or light going into the light area, or the darkness, and so forth. Some people call it heaven and hell. And so, it just depends on, you know, where you are and what you thought. Um, I believe that there can be bliss after this particular reality. I believe that there can be um, uh, chaos after this particular reality too. It just depends on what you're doing. And that's really totally up to us as individual souls. It's totally up to us to make a conscious decision on how we would like to spend our afterlife. And I know that there are some who say that it is only something that can be done from a religious standpoint, or a spiritual standpoint. Either way, whether you say religion or spiritual, it is all our thought processes based off of doctrine that we've had some ability to encounter, and we've just made decisions based off of what felt good and resonated with us. So what do you feel about death? What is your take on death, and how do you actually feel about it?
I have always been interested and curious and leaned into death.
Mm-hmm.
There's different forms of death, and I recall even when I was really young, because in a previous episode I mentioned I had experiences connecting with people that I knew were once walking this earth and then they weren't. I'm like, oh, okay. It was just very matter of fact for me. Um, and so for me, it was just like I know that there what's considered like, okay, you get like this person is now getting barriers in this casket or whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
but this be like they're still here though, and so I knew that at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
um I didn't necessarily know how to articulate it, but if you're like, I'm like 4 or 5 years old, I'm like, you know, like no, like I don't see that.
Yeah.
um I didn't understand why so many people were afraid of death. What are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
What are you afraid of losing because you're still going to exist? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just in a different way.
Right.
And so over time though, you know, I think, I was raised Christian. I
Mm-hmm.
I I'm not, I don't identify as Christian anymore. um but we were taught to fear death. If you like, you should fear death if you do not believe in Jesus and God and all these other things, right? If you don't follow what's in the Bible, then you're going to burn in hell and you should be afraid of that, right? So it's like it's, you
Mhm.
must follow this or else, right? That's
Mhm.
the only way you can um, not fear death
Mhm.
or like be okay with it is to make sure you don't go to hell. And it's just
Mhm.
like I was like, what? Like when I look back on that time, it's
Mhm.
like death is to me, death is part of an evolutionary process.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
we have our
Mhm.
physical form, we have a physical
Mhm.
form, and we are transitioning out of that physical form.
Mm.
Now, where you go after that, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this process of death in itself, it is just a transition
Mhm.
of form. It is
Mhm.
not it is not necessarily the end all be all.
Yeah.
And
It's the beginning for me.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's that process of death and rebirth. It is
Yeah.
a transition period.
Mhm.
It is a
Mhm.
time as I feel like it's something that can depending how on how death can show up, right?
Mhm.
Death can be tragic for a lot of people. I've definitely um, especially with the way our world is right now and
Yeah.
how people are not, there's just so much intentional like killing versus like killing and murder versus death different.
Yeah.
So let's let me clarify that. I feel like
Yeah.
it's different. I feel like people should talk about it more, especially families,
Mhm.
when it comes to what to do after death, after a person that you love or care about or whatever, after they transition out of this physical form.
Mhm.
There's no preparation. Like if you're so afraid of death, why aren't you like don't avoid it? Like how can you prepare for it? So that's one thing to think about. Um, and if you keep avoiding the process, avoiding the topic is not going to reduce your chances of death. Like it's a guaranteed process, and we die every day, G.
It's inevitable. We were born to die. It's the chapters that we write
Hmm.
during our time of breathing on this side of the dirt that really matters. And to prepare oneself for a transition into a better way of existing or into a different form of existing is imperative. One of the things I've learned is that once you accept that transitioning, leaving this physical form is inevitable, once you accept that, then the barriers on and the blockages in front of you that you've placed literally in front of you, they seem to disappear. And you just seem like you just start getting this superhuman strength. See, a lot of times it happens to people who almost lose their lives, and they just wake up from whatever they've been through, and they're like, "Whoo!" And then you see those people have a different change in attitude. They have a different thought process because they were like, "Dude, let me go ahead because I know it's coming." Then they're able to go on to achieve greater things prior to actually transitioning. Once you accept, I used to be afraid of death. Like I used to be, it was horrible. I used to think about with my kids when they walked out the door, I would just conjure up all kind of things in my little poor head, honey, about what could happen to my kids if they go outside. And, my mates, if they were to go somewhere, they were a little bit later than what they normally are coming to the house. And, oh God, did something happen to them? And it was just driving me fucking nuts. And then it happened, then my life was almost over. And, uh, after that, I was like, shh, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I'm going to prepare for not death or transition, but to live in this life and to enjoy this life and to accept the fact that one day everybody is going to roll up out of here at one point or another. Especially, well, not especially, all of us are going to roll out of here at one point or another. So when you accept death as or you accept the transitioning or the lifelessness of your body, when you accept that that is inevitable, baby, you're gonna start living like you've never lived before.
Yeah, and for me, that is the preparation. Preparing for
Mhm,
death is living,
mhm,
living to
Mhm.
your best ability. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to just wait around to die.
Right.
That does not make sense to me.
Mhm. Being in fear.
Right.
You miss out on
Prepare
so many
to
different experiences when you do that.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
the work is to live and to thrive in this life.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if you're not doing that, then what are you doing? And we forget
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. This is true.
Yeah. And then I feel like another part of that that tends to be synonymous with death is is getting older,
Mm.
aging, maturing. And it's almost like there is this timestamp once you reach a certain age, and it's like, okay, well, now like just life stops. And it's like life doesn't stop until and like it
Until
doesn't.
it does.
It doesn't stop until it stops. You know what I
Right, it
mean?
don't go away until it go away. So, until
Right.
that time happen, you live like it ain't gonna ever go away.
Exactly. And there
And
was a time where
mhm.
it was like, if you look back in history when it comes to reaching ages of, like, now it's a lot normal to reach to surpass the age of 100, but even before that, like well before, people were living for
Mhm.
like for years, like in the hundreds.
Mhm.
And so uh, I believe part of the reason why there's been a lot of, aside from the killings and the murder in
Mhm.
that form, when it comes to just um, reaching um, these age ranges of, like, well into your hundreds, but also being in good mind and body and spirit,
Mhm.
is because of what we're doing to our physical forms, all the chemicals, all the stuff that we're doing to our bodies. Like, we're not really
Mhm.
taking care of our physical form in order to
Mhm.
maintain that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
A lot of our elders have different ailments, and
Mhm.
I aspire to be an elder that is still in my right mind
Baby up kicking it and everything.
and
Okay.
everything,
Mhm.
well into
Mhm.
my hundreds, and still being
Mhm.
able to be part of that regeneration process, because it's through that wisdom. Like, as we age, it's like, it's not about, so people are afraid to get old because then old is equated to death. But it's like,
Mhm.
if you start to live and you start to honor thyself,
Mhm.
then you become the wisdom keeper, and you're
Mhm.
able part and so and part of that death rebirth cycle is being able to, don't just keep everything to yourself. What can you share, what can you put back out into society,
Mhm.
into others, um,
Mhm.
and inspire them to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I
Yeah.
see, like, I am inspired when I see my elders. It's
Mhm.
just like, it's either going to inspire me to do something, to not do something, or it's going to inspire me to do
To
something.
do
And I
something.
promise you,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm gonna,
Yeah.
like, I'm not about to be out here, not being able to still feel like I cannot contribute to society because of my age. I think we need to get out of
Right.
that mindset. Like, death does not equate to aging in the way that, like, we need to change our mindset about, like, how that equates.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, my thoughts right now are wanting to know what our listeners are feeling. I want to know where your mindset is when it comes to death. Does it make you afraid, or do you view it as a form of freedom? How do you feel? You know, things happen after you've transitioned, because it's a very, very wide, a broad um, scope of viewing. No one way is the correct way, because ultimately we're not going to recognize what it is until it happens. So I would really like to know what our listeners feel about death. Like, what do you feel about it? Like, are you afraid of it, or have you had some near-death experiences? I'd like to learn of those too, because a lot of times when you have those near-death experiences, how did it change your life after that? Like, what did you do differently? and how are you living now because of it. So I'd really, really like to know that from our listeners. I'd like for you guys to go over to like, subscribe, comment, and share on all social platforms. Go over there and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I need you to get with it and come on and get on that VIP list, so that you will be first in the know about all these beautiful things that we're going to be doing, prior to them happening, and also prior to the drops of beautiful gems like these. So I am Mayet Ajay Ib. I am the one of your hosts here at Spirit Wisdom Reset, and this is my beautiful co-host Uja Wajet. Do you have anything you want to say before we bounce on these people?
If you are just now discovering our podcast, don't forget to dial it on back to some of those earlier episodes and let us know what you think about those as well.
Absolutely. Right now, y'all, it's slow motion. If you're watching this in this moment, honey, we in October, honey, and it is slow motion time. It is time that we are kind of settling down, and our demeanor really, really speaks to that. So there you have it. I hope y'all are keeping dry and warm out there. And until our next episode, don't forget we drop one every Wednesday, baby, either on YouTube and other social platforms or under our audio platforms as well. So every Wednesday, y'all. We'll holler at you soon. Peace.
Bye.
Spirit is a reset podcast. Yeah.